So like we talked about, the economic impact for the 126 Minnesota airports was done for, data was collected in 2018. Those numbers are finalized. They've gone to print. There's documents that can't be changed. Well, aviation's a dynamic industry. Things do change. So what if we can tweak some of these impacts, the baseline assumptions and numbers, the drivers that we discussed to come up with the 4 measures for all of the 5 categories? What if we can tweak that stuff? Well, we have this calculator here. I'm going to assume everybody has it pulled up. Please let me know if you need the link again. Oops. Let's see. Should be seeing this on the screen. You can zoom in a little bit. Okay, so this is our web-based calculator. This is the URL for the public calculator. This will not change, but it's not ready to be rolled out. We'd prefer you to not share this widely until we roll out the full study documents at the end of the month. So, nothing's stopping you from emailing this to your whole email contacts list. We just ask that you please don't. The first thing to note here, there's a download user guide button here. It might be useful to click that and have the document handy. This is the full 30-page user guide that is clickable from the starting point of the calculator, the home page. It covers all sections of the calculator and provides a little bit of methodology and some, explains what you're seeing on the screen and what you should be plugging in. If at any point you're on a page of the calculator and you don't want to sift through 30 pages, the question mark on each individual page of the calculator will take you to a specific section that says, hey, how do I use this? This should walk you through the steps. And it's pretty, the calculator is not anything complex. So this may be overkill for many of you tech-savvy people, but nonetheless, it's available. So the first thing we start with is we have a search box for your airport. We're going to start with St. Cloud. So you can type in the 3-letter ID, you can type in ST period, or you can type in cloud, any word within the airport name and ID will bring it up. Click the airport and click continue. So here we have the economic impact produced as a result of the 2018-19 study for St. Cloud Regional Airport. We have the 4 measures identified: employment, payroll, and spending. Here, we're focusing on this top box here. We have our direct impacts for each of those measures. Indirect and induced, which we talked about, are the ripple effect, the multiplier impacts, and then adding up direct plus indirect and induced, we get our total impact. So St. Cloud, as produced in the study, has 395 total jobs with 49 million in total annual economic activity. Now, down in the bottom, we have some tabs here which identify the impacts by each of the 5 categories that we measured here in the study. Currently, we haven't done anything. We've not changed anything. So all of these numbers in the bottom summary table will match what's here at the top. But let's go through and change some things. Let's see. Let's say we're looking at this. The St. Cloud Airport's going to now have 9 employees. And no matter whatever you do, it's always recommended to click Save and Continue. If you change something, click Save and Continue so it sticks. If you type in 9, it will be immediately reflected in this updated results table, but always click Save and Continue if you plan to navigate to a different tab that will, enact your change. So note, I clicked Save and Continue, and a little warning popped up. Did you remember to adjust payroll and spending if applicable? Well, we've adjusted our employees for the airport, so generally speaking, I would assume payroll will go up. So let's just change that to $550,000. Because you have another employee and a half more, you don't necessarily need have more spending at the airport, but let's just, for demonstration purposes, let's say the airport has a lot more spending going on. So immediately those changes are in effect, and you can see we started at 7.3, which is rounded up from 7.25 jobs, a part-time or a part-time seasonal person. We just have one decimal showing here for jobs. But now we have 9 jobs and annual economic activity of 1.45 million. So again, anytime you hit save and continue on this tab, it's going to remind you to update. So now this is just the direct impacts. These are the jobs associated with the airport sponsor, the airport manager at St. Cloud. Let's go back to the summary and see how that changes our total impact now that we're factoring in our multipliers. So we started with 194 jobs on the direct side, 395 jobs, factoring in multipliers. We added a job and a half, so now we have 196 jobs and now 399. So that's a marginal increase. We're trying to be reasonable. We could have blown that up by using much larger numbers, just trying to be realistic in our examples here. And you can see we started with 49 million, 49.2 million nearly. Now we have 49.8 million in total annual economic activity. So just a small change drives total annual economic activity up nearly $700,000. Now let's go to business tenants. Let's say St. Cloud, they're going to get a new tenant. So this page, again, it summarizes your 2019 results for your business tenants. It lists your tenants down here, so you know what that number is made up of. However, this calculator, to protect sensitive information that tenants may have given us, we are not listing the business's name, nor are we listing, payroll or spending for specific tenants. We're just listing direct employment for each tenant, only showing tenant type. Now, if you're familiar with that particular airport, you might be able to identify what those business entities are. However, we are not allowing anybody to tweak anything here, whereas you can back into, a pay per employee average here. So what can we do here to change our numbers? Let's say in a couple years, St. Cloud, they're going to get a new maintenance facility. Oops. So we type in a name, and that can be anything. Now we have 2 different types of aircraft maintenance. These are all of the business types considered in the study. Each of them have multipliers specific to the type of industry that they occupy. Consider aircraft maintenance, just a small repair shop. But let's say St. Cloud's going to get a turbine maintenance, which have a little bit more highly skilled, higher paid wages. So let's say they're going to get 8 employees here. So as soon as you click away, the updated results are now higher. We have an additional 8 employees, and you'll notice payroll and spending has subsequently gone up, as has annual economic activity. Now, remember to hit save and continue. This page is a little bit slower than the other pages. There's a little bit more going on behind the scenes. So now we have our new business tenant added here below our existing tenants, exactly as you entered it. And you can add as many tenants as you like for your airport. It does also have the capability to accept negative numbers. So if you wanted to, if one of these existing tenants is going away, you can account for a loss in a tenant. However, keep in mind, the existing tenant data is based on real data given to us by the tenants in the field based on the survey efforts that we did. A new tenant is based on statewide averages. So any new tenant you add or subtract is not going to be exactly identical to existing data if a tenant did provide it. So keep that in mind. If you're trying to subtract, let's say this charter company with 2.5 goes away, if they gave us a real survey, the underlying numbers at this top table are based on the real data that that entity gave us. If you subtract that charter and put in -2.5, it's based on averages. So the numbers may not subtract exactly, but that's okay. It's fairly close. The data that charter entity would have given us is factoring into the average that we're running the new and potential added or subtracted business entities. So now we've saved that. We can go, let me just get rid of this. But you can see as I added a negative, it went down to 96. So we did lose 104, or we did lose eight jobs from the 104 where we started. Okay, so we'll go back to the summary tab. So now just a little tweak to airport management and 8 new aircraft maintenance jobs. Started at 395 total jobs. Now we have 417. And annual economic activity went from 49 million to 62.5 million nearly. Just a small tweak results in some significant change. And again, all of the underlying math behind this is the same as the methodology that we outlined in the preceding PowerPoint. Yeah, sorry, I've been looking down.
So I'm looking at the business tenant type menu that's on here.
Mm-hmm.
Study account for businesses that may be located at airports that aren't aviation related.
Yes, good question. And that's something I neglected to discuss, which was an important point. We're only considering as business tenants on airport businesses or agencies that are aviation related. So there may be on airport entities that don't have any aviation component. We were at Brainerd yesterday. There's a lab testing entity, water testing in just an old hangar. They're there because they've always been there. It's convenient to be there. They have no aviation component. We did not include them. There are other things. Brainerd Airport also has a cafe. Now, not inherently aviation related, but the cafe being on an airport, part of the appeal of going to the cafe is being in an airport environment, being able to see the operations, see the airfield. Also, users of the airport probably eat there. So that is a concession, classified as a concession at that airport. There may be off-airport aviation-related entities, aerospace companies. That's not counted. We're kind of siloing it. It has to be on-airport and aviation-related. So, thank you. So let's go to the capital investment tab. Let's see what happens. As we mentioned, this is the category that has the highest likelihood to change from year to year. And let's say airport's been trying to get some big project pushed through, and they finally get the big $10 million project. What you do is you put in the cumulative total. It could be one project or multiple projects. Put in the total in the cumulative total box, and then you put in your additional time horizon that it takes to cover those projects. So we started with a 5-year average, and because we're adding $10 million over an additional 2 years, it's now modifying that 5-year average into a 7-year average that includes that $10 million. So initially, at first glance, well, $10 million, it only went up 700,000. Well, keep in mind the math here, and I can pull up a calculator. Let's actually do that. Oops. This is a little bit smaller. So let's take our 5-year average and back it out of 5-year average. 2,513 times 5. This is the total spend over 5 years that goes into the 2.5 million. Now let's add in $10 million. Now it's an additional 2 years added onto the 5 years. So now we divide by 7. Oops, what did I do wrong?
You need to hit enter after the 7.
Oh no, that's
before the 7.
Before the 7.
After you
Well,
hit the addition.
I think it worked. 3.2 million is our new total, which is a 7-year average, factoring in the additional $10 million in spend. Questions thus far? Okay. Now, the $10 million and the previous 5-year average, again, we use a 5-year average to smooth out the fluctuations from year to year. That doesn't mean that $10 million in spend only creates 4 jobs. On its own, that $10 million project or series of projects is much more valuable. So if you click this gray box here that says standalone function, capital investment impact estimator, that opens a new tab that is it's disconnected from the calculator. You can't save anything here. But if you want to see the impact of a single project, put in the same $10 million, and it has a direct impact of 53 direct jobs. And that's based on, so this would be actually the actual jobs per million spending for construction impacts on a statewide average. Yes.
I have a question. Thank you, Bill.
Okay.
His question is, it looks like the CIP portion should be updated every year if we're going to compare it to the 2019 5-year average. Is that right?
It should be updated every year, as in the calculator, we load in fresh data. Is that,
Yes.
okay. That's certainly possible. The calculator as it stands right now, it does not do that. I'm sure modifications could be made to do that, but this is similarly, everything, all the numbers represented on the calculator are based on the 2019 direct results, which were collected in the field, and they're based on multipliers specific to 2018, 2019 timeframe. So if we were to allow this to, continue to update itself, that's certainly a possibility, but there's other factors we need to consider. And we'd have to have fresh multipliers and other things. It would get a little bit stale the further away you got from the year the study was conducted. Inflation factors, another thing. Yeah.
What would go under the individual capital investment assumptions? Is that just for note-taking purposes? Or?
Yeah, good point. That's just, that's something I neglected to cover, but you want to say this was for runway extension and various, apron rehab, or, you can put in notes, to yourself. And the purpose of that is we have this print button on every page. So if you want to run this scenario and show somebody, you can print this or save it as a PDF, and those notes are there, so you know what went into, sorry for banging, what went into that $10,000 or $10 million, and what the resultant impact is. So let's save this PDF. Let's see if we can do that. So anytime you click a printer-friendly button, I'll just save it to the desktop here. It creates a printer-friendly version of the calculator. I'm not sure if, let's see, it's going to create a PDF here. Just a basic file. Looks exactly like what you just did. And you could print this and share it. As needed. So we'll click out of here. Let's see if I get out of there. We'll just go back to, yes, Andrew.
Does the estimate impacts for the individual capital investment, is that based off of the airport, or is it?
That's a statewide average. It's
Okay.
not specific
Okay.
to your airport.
Okay.
So,
All right.
And in general, for the capital investment category, the jobs per million conversion ratio, that is a statewide average used for every airport in all of the documents. Now, that's going to be too high for some airports, going to be too low for some, but on a statewide, it's a specific to Minnesota in 2018. On the net, it works out. So we'll go back to our main calculator. So since we just discussed the print page, let's check out that function here. We'll close this quickly. So it opened a new tab that is a little bit more printer friendly in format. It has where we started. It has our updated numbers based on the tweaks we've made thus far in the 3 categories. And then it summarizes those inputs that we've made. So you can print this and show this to a friend or colleague. It looks like we didn't save that's why it's important to always hit save. We didn't save the capital investment tweaks we've made. And then there's two other things we didn't get to, the visiting, general aviation visitor expenditures and enplanements or commercial visitors. So I just wanted to highlight that. It may be useful if you wanted to just, let's say you just wanted to show, hey, we're real close to landing this one big new tenant. We just got to really show the impact. It would probably be most useful to go in and do that one scenario showing that one tenant and print that rather than doing a bunch of tweaks where it might be harder to identify that one tenant that maybe is most important to showing somebody the additional impact of. So let's move to general aviation visitors. Now, what was the first thing we asked airports and FBOs in our process to estimate general aviation visitor spending? It was, on a typical week, how many visiting aircraft arrivals do you have? So this is the number St. Cloud reported to us, either St. Cloud or the FBO there, or a combination of the two. The FBOs often have a good handle on day-to-day operations, sometimes better than the airports themselves. So this number is the key driver. The fleet mix specific to St. Cloud is baked into this underneath that. And the visitors per aircraft type is baked into this. So this, to kind of touch on your question, Andrew, this is specific to St. Cloud's numbers, their underlying assumptions. And visitor spending is specific to St. Cloud as well. So when you adjust 57, let's say it roughly doubles to 100. They've got big things. Things double roughly proportionate because we're using the same underlying assumptions. 52, now we have 90 direct jobs in the general aviation visitor spend category. Excuse me. Again, we'll click Save and Continue, and we can go back to the summary. See the cumulative change that we have implemented. Again, we started at 395 and 49.2, and we're at 473 and the 66.5 million. So these changes are starting to add up. Now, St. Cloud's a commercial airport, so we can adjust the commercial visitor numbers. The main driver of that is enplanements. The percent visitors will stay the same no matter what you put in here. Let's say they roughly double, so from 20,000, 21,000 to 40,000. They get more Allegiant service in there. I'm sure they'd be happy to hear that. Then we go from 18 direct jobs to 35 and 1.6 million in annual economic activity to 3.15. Now, if you're a general aviation airport and you don't have commercial service activity, these boxes, this tab will exist for you. The box to input data will exist, but nothing happens when you put numbers in there. Because all of the drivers, the assumptions under there are specific to that airport, we are not assessing what's the potential economic impact of new service at an airport that doesn't already have it. That's not the purpose of this calculator. There's too many numbers specific to that airport that drive this number. We would need to know, well, what are the enplanements and what are the percent visitors and what's the average spend per visitor, which we don't know at a airport that doesn't have existing commercial service. Let's see, did I hit Save and Continue? No, I did not. That's right. Okay, go back to our summary. Let's look at the total change that we have done here. We started at 395, now we're at 499. So over 100 more jobs and 49.1 million in total annual economic activity. Now we have 69.5. And again, the total numbers that I'm touching on include the direct, which is the on-airport or a direct result of airport activity and spending, plus the ripple effect in the local economy. So this is the big, the big total number for St. Cloud. And again, let's see what the print feature looks like here. Pull it up. Might be this one. Okay, so you have where you started, where you ended. Let's see, 502. It's a little bit different than what we had. Let's check on that. And you have your inputs here. Again, I didn't save capital investment, but that would be reflected there. Okay, 502, yeah. Okay, we'll close out of here. Now let's try a different airport. Let's from the summary page, you can start over. Let's look at a smaller airport. Austin Municipal. Just get a feel for a smaller general aviation airport. 26 direct jobs, 47 total, 5 million direct jobs, and 8.8 million in total annual economic activity. Now we look at airport management. They've got a really small airport management number, 1/10 of an employee. How does that happen? Well, if you recall, we discussed this is a city airport, so we've assigned 1/10 of an employee based on those small slivers of activities that people at the state, or not the state, the city, during their day-to-day jobs would involve the airport in their covering airport business. It could be a variety of jobs. It could just be one person that says 10% of my time I spend dealing with the airport. A little bit of payroll is assigned to that 1/10 of an employee. That doesn't mean their salary is $70,000. It might mean that, it might not. It could be an average. But their spending is $97,000. That seems really high. That's more appropriate for an airport of this size, but it's interesting because they don't have dedicated employees, but they still have spending to cover the maintenance of the airport. In this particular case, they could be contracted with the local FBO. They could be giving the FBO some money to cover the day-to-day operations of the airport. I know at this airport, Austin, they also have they contract out for their grass cutting and snow removal. So a good chunk of this $97,000 is that spending. So whether or not there is a dedicated airport manager, it's important to note here in this example that there is impacts being driven by the airport management category, even for very, very small airports. So we won't change anything here, but we can similarly go through the business tenants. We see they have an FBO and 2 corporate flight departments. We can do the same thing, new maintenance facility, but this time it's going to be a smaller, less robust facility. Just 2 guys, 2-man shop. Save and continue. And you can see the updated results here, which is now reflected on your summary. Compare the bottom section to the top section, where you started and where you ended. We'd like to go through each tab, but I wanted to highlight here, as I mentioned, the commercial service visitor spending section. This is an airport without existing commercial airline service, so no matter what we put in here, we can say they're going to have lots and lots of enplanements. Nothing happens because there's no underlying data to drive this. Now, another feature we are allowing, let's say, gee, you really put a lot of time into this scenario that you've developed. You want to save it. You can print it. That'd be nice. That's nice to have on your desk. But you want to come back to exactly what you just did. Well, all of those inputs you did, you can send them to yourself and revisit this exact session and scenario. It's precisely this URL. You can email that to yourself by putting your email in there. It would just be a plain text email with a link to this exact scenario. So if I were to copy this, it has the exact same numbers driving it, same numbers plugged in. So that's what you would email to yourself. There's a contact information button here. If you have any questions or comments, you have a problem, or you just really want to give us a compliment, this is where you would do that. This goes to Julie Carr, and I'm copied on this, so if you have questions, we'll do our best to get back to you as soon as we can. Please be detailed and specific as necessary. There are question mark buttons here, again, to access the user guide on any individual page. Got a lot of tabs open here. So this one's specific to the airport summary, but let's just see what it looks like on commercial visitors. It's a 4-page summary specific to that tab and gives you some underlying process and help with what to put in, descriptions, what you would put in, what you're seeing on the page. So keep in mind there is help available either, through us or the online user guide. And this is meant to stand alone. We don't expect all of the users of this calculator to have read all of the materials that we covered or have sat through this training. This is meant to be shared. So therefore, that's why these user guides are quite large, just to help give some background and purpose to it, so you can understand what you're doing and what the economic impact is without having been versed in all of the other materials that we've covered here today and what we've produced for MnDOT. Any questions thus far? I think we're... Sure. So there are 2 versions of the calculator. This is the public version that is specific to this link you see up top. Julie and MnDOT has an internal version of the calculator where it's exactly the same, except for on the business tenants tab, Julie can tweak the direct employment for a specific tenant, which runs on the exact precise data that tenant would have given us. So if anybody wants to say, hey, this tenant is leaving or they're expanding, what is the precise impact of additional or fewer jobs associated with the tenant? Call Julie, she can do that for you and she'll give you that number. We just don't want that out there for anybody to use, because part of the exchange in asking tenants to give us their information is we said, hey, we're not going to share your data anywhere. So we don't want anybody to be able to back into sensitive information. So keep that in mind. There are 2 versions. It can do a little bit more with Julie's help. Other questions? Yes.
Is the public version accessible, or is there an accessible alternative?
Accessible as in ADA
Yeah.
accessible? Great question. This was put through the ringer by ADA specialists with the state. So that's not my area of expertise, but I know the colors were vetted and there are, anchor points throughout. So, it can be a screen reader can identify
Right.
what's on the screen,
Gotcha.
stuff like that.
Thanks.
Yes, good question.
You said for the, for instance, for the commercial data, that if an airport doesn't already have commercial flight traffic, then it's not possible to calculate the impact from potential.
That's right. Yes. Yeah. So in Austin's case here, I can show you that exactly. Austin's a small municipal airport, city owned. They don't have existing commercial air service. A lot goes into getting airline services, more than just, an airline showing up, but you put in whatever number you want here, nothing's going to happen because there's no enplanements. I mean, there's no visitor or average spend per visitor underlying to multiply against. Any other questions? Julian, anything I'm missing here?
Can we go back to the
Sure.
front page, the very beginning, start over. So, and talk just a little bit about the map and make sure we got that information in there so that people know where to go to access their studies.
Sure. Yeah, this little statement here. This calculator does not cover the MAC airports. You can't choose MSP or Flying Cloud or St. Paul downtown. You'd have to visit metroairports.org to see their specific study that they did separately, different time frame, to identify those impacts. In our tech report, we do have those identified. So if you're truly curious and you want to look through the state study, it is available at the very end of the technical report. The calculator does not cover that stuff. We just didn't have all the underlying assumptions step by step to make that happen. Mhm. All right. Okay. That's all we've got. Again, if you have questions, reach out to myself, Julie, any of the aeronautics staff. We'll be happy to help you out. But thanks for attending today, and hopefully you guys have learned a little bit and know how to use the data, and we look forward to rolling that out to you. So thanks again. All right.